Welcome to Sheri 2016, Session 2.4, Common Problems and How to Avoid Them. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Odoni Paolucci, an assistant professor within the medical education specialization of the Department of Community Health Sciences and Department of Surgery in the Cummings School of Medicine at the University of Calgary. In this session, I will present some information on some common problems you may face as you plan, conduct, and work to complete your scholarly project. By the end of this session, learners may be able to identify potential problems common to planning and conducting a scholarly project, and present potential ways to mitigate or overcome anticipated problems. Whether you are a novice or expert, problems are a natural part of the scholarly process, so it's a good idea to consider potential roadblocks and find ways to remove as many of them from your path as you can. While not an exhaustive list by any means, the challenges I want to present to you include some of the more common ones I've experienced, as well as those others in our research community have faced. At the project planning phase, we want to anticipate common problems, such as your research questions are not focused, clear, or feasible. Your proposed methods are not appropriate to answer your research questions, and therefore your findings and methods will lack generalizability. I won't spend too much time on these, as I think we've covered them in the first workshop session and recordings. However, just in review, remember the importance of developing a doable project, consulting the literature, finding a theoretical basis to support your topic, ensuring that your topic holds your interest and that of others, as well as looking for a niche in which you can make a difference. Choosing the right methodology will also help with these problems. As we previously said, this means selecting a procedure for conducting your research that comes from the research question, not your personal preference for one design or another. What about the problem of lacking expertise? These days we're all hearing about the importance of working on interdisciplinary teams, as well as the benefits of assembling research teams that have a diverse and complementary skill sets. The reality is that your research cannot be done in a vacuum. You will need a team to support you and the work you intend on carrying out. Sometimes you need to assemble a network of advisors before you start your project. These people can be an invaluable resource in helping you consider your idea from a different angle or perspective. You may invite others on board because they possess a specific skill set that you don't have. For instance, you may need someone with quantitative expertise or someone with qualitative expertise. Be very clear about what expertise you are drawing on them for. Most people are really willing to help when you come structured and prepared. So be sure there's a good match between the person you invite, the research question methodology, and other team members. Once members are invited on your team, unless you state otherwise, there may be the expectation that they remain integral until the completion of your project. These partnerships may recreate real rewards, but they can also create some internal working tensions. So just ensure everyone is clear on what is expected of the partnership. Negotiations like about authorship, for example, those should be clearly had at the outset. Once you start executing the methodology or conducting the project, there are other problems common to this phase. So things like participant or recruitment or response rate. Finding participants to approach and secure a commitment to participate, and ensuring there's enough to continue recruiting so you can gather sufficient data to respond to your research questions. So maintaining this steady recruitment is a common issue that many face. Regardless of whether your study is quantitative or qualitative, your study must gather enough data so it can support research findings. So leverage the power of your network and don't be afraid to reach out to other researchers to find out how they recruited or if they could help you in your recruiting efforts. You never know. They may well turn into key advocates for your research and your recruitment. Sometimes recruiting participants means you need to go through institutional barriers, and this can present additional challenges. But don't stop at the first sign of rejection. Pursue alternative avenues. Maybe this institution refuses you access, but maybe another will provide the access you're looking for. You need to build relationships with people who will help you gain access. So think of genuine ways this can be a mutually beneficial alliance and pitch it that way. People who are gatekeepers need to believe you're objective and that your research can potentially yield a positive impact on their institution as well. Response rates typically are discussed in reference to survey studies. A low response rate is a continuing problem, and they're usually not random, so they could bias your results. Conclusions that are drawn from your work may incite concern that your data is unrepresentative. You can anticipate low response rates and do a few things out right at the planning stage. One solution is to choose an appropriate survey length for your audience. So a tool that's too long can inhibit participant response. They may choose to fill out only part of your survey or reject completing it outright. In general, shorter surveys, so those that take on average less than 15 minutes in total to complete, they tend to elicit higher response rates. Another solution is to ensure that the survey is easy to take and return. So a well-designed, attractive survey that is easy to complete will improve response rate and data accuracy. To get the best response rate possible, consider your options of web-based surveys, paper mail surveys, or telephone surveys. Each have their own advantages and disadvantages for you to consider. Another common problem is that of data entry. We tend to like to take advantage of technology, like data entry and analysis software that exists when we're involved in research, but it's important to not let it hinder progress in the project. Software should be seen as helping you organize your data, look for patterns, trends, or themes, but don't let accessing the software prevent you from gaining these insights. If using the software properly is getting in the way of looking at your data, prepare in advance by getting the necessary access and training to use the software you want. If you can't afford this technology or can't get the necessary training and support to use it, then fall back to manual methods. They may be more time-consuming, but if in the end they can maintain the quality and integrity of your data, you should use that process instead. View software as a tool that can help you manage your data, but anticipate problems you can face in using it. When you rely heavily on individuals to input data, track results, and manage databases or the transcription and review process, the simple fact is that human error can be introduced. So one solution is to hire well-trained, detailed-oriented staff, or provide sufficient training to them once they're hired so that their focus is just on the data alone. When someone is trying to juggle more than one task, so let's say you have someone that's helping you with recruitment, scheduling appointments, writing, collecting and tracking data, this person can quickly become overburdened, and this unfortunately can then lead to errors. So it can also be useful to have an outside analyst or member of the investigative team review the data. This person can help you identify if there are any errors, missing data, or any other necessary changes that need to be made prior to analysis. Another common problem involves making sense of your data. It can be overwhelming to look at all the pages and pages of transcribed interviews or the columns of empirical data on your spreadsheet. Where do you start? Well, go back to your research question. Remember, if you created a question grounded in the existing research, then your questions can provide direction in how you organize your results in a meaningful way. Stay focused and don't become distracted by irrelevant data. You could make a note to yourself to go back and look at these interesting findings later, but don't let this take you away from the main research questions and hypotheses you've posed for this project. Organize your data around the research questions. Another useful thing to do is to listen to the data. Try to look at your data without any preconceived ideas and let the data come alive in its richness. Sometimes with quantitative methods, it's easy to feel removed from the original data when all you're looking at is a number. Ground yourself to what that numerical value represents. You collected that data point from a real person, and it contributes to the story you're presenting and telling. Another common problem is inconsistent protocols or changes in your plan. Regardless of whether you're conducting a clinical trial, it's imperative that you have a protocol in place before your participants begin and you collect your data. Changing your protocol can affect the outcomes and potential viability of your project. But if you need to change your protocol after the study begins, be sure to consult with your expert advisors or the members of your research team. Also, it's important that any changes you want to make to the approved protocol, that they be reviewed and approved by your institutional ethics research board before implementation, especially if the requested changes necessitate revision of the consent documents or recruitment materials or other approved study materials. The process for amending a protocol is as simple as submitting an amendment request. Remember that some changes may be more defensible than others. Don't consider changes as necessarily as failures. The need for change can serve as a positive catalyst in the long term for your project. The important thing is to be ethical, clear, and transparent with how and the why of your changes. Keep a clear log of how this change may have impacted your data collection. Ensure you keep a track of your protocol iterations and clearly label them so whoever is collecting data for your project knows that this is the most updated version to use. Other common problems include that of miscalculated timelines. It's not uncommon for us to underestimate the time it takes to carry out certain tasks, like the writing procedures or getting the necessary approvals, recruiting participants, and expert members to our teams. Although I haven't found a foolproof way to accurately determine time to completion for all project tasks, I have been able to determine some good guidelines and have always found it most useful to consult with other researchers. Asking others for their input on establishing realistic and sensible timelines based on their own experience can really help you put tighter parameters around your time frame. Another solution is to use project management tools, as we presented in an earlier session 2.1. These kinds of tools can help you mitigate miscalculations in your timeline and your project conduct. Similarly, errors in budgets can have serious consequences on the longevity and success of your project. Many people rush through the planning of their budget, but the reality is it can take over several days to develop an accurate project budget. It's a good idea to consult with others for input. Budget changes often impact everything else in your project, so try not to make substantial changes to it unless you have detected an error in the original plan. Sometimes we can make basic math mistakes, but check your formulas and ensure all currency exchange items and conversions have been made accurately. Again, another way to help you with this is to use some of those project management tools presented earlier. Recognize that for some people, your budget is your proposal, so be sure that your budget can serve as a standalone document. Ask yourself, does it tell the story of what your project is about and what you plan to do? Finally, declining investigator motivation or morale is another common problem that you might face while you're running your project. Sometimes in the course of a large project, the biggest challenge rests with keeping you motivated so you can persist despite the obstacles you face and the pressures of other work and personal commitments. This is where your passion and purpose come in. Working on something you believe in and that you're passionate about really helps fuel the research process. Your attitude makes a huge difference as well. You need to believe you've planned appropriately and that you can do this. You can carry this project out. So stay positive. And this kind of an attitude can be fed by finding ways to reward yourself. Whatever is meaningful to you, if it's going to the movies, scheduling a run, or going out for dinner with your family, all these kinds of things can help ensure you recharge and recognize your great investment and success. In summary, in this session, we looked at some common problems that you may encounter when engaged in scholarly work, and I presented some ways you may anticipate, mitigate, or overcome such problems so they don't jeopardize the quality of your data or conduct of your project.